Caleb McTavish choked on the acrid smoke, his ears ringing. Artillery shells screamed overhead, tearing chunks out of the Pennsylvania soil. He ducked lower in the shallow trench, the stench of gunpowder and fear thick in the air. "Mac! You all right, Mac?" a voice yelled over the din. It was Finn, a fresh-faced kid from Ohio, barely old enough to shave. "Fine, Finn." "Just peachy," Caleb shouted back, forcing a grin. His hands trembled as he reloaded his rifle. He could feel the tremor running through the earth, the relentless drumming of approaching Confederate infantry. The letter. He had to finish it. He pulled a crumpled piece of paper and a stub of pencil from his breast pocket, his heart hammering against his ribs. The battle raged around him, a maelstrom of death and destruction, but he had to get these words down. "For Sarah. Thinking about writing your will, Mac," Finn joked nervously, peering over the trench. Caleb ignored him, his brow furrowed in concentration. "If you are reading this, I am dead." He paused, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. "Fine, Finn." "Just peachy," Caleb shouted back, forcing a grin. His hands trembled as he reloaded his rifle. He could feel the tremor running through the earth, the relentless drumming of approaching Confederate infantry. The letter. He had to finish it. He pulled a crumpled piece of paper and a stub of pencil from his breast pocket, his heart hammering against his ribs. The battle raged around him, a maelstrom of death and destruction, but he had to get these words down. "For Sarah. Thinking about writing your will, Mac," Finn joked nervously, peering over the trench. Caleb ignored him, his brow furrowed in concentration. "If you are reading this, I am dead." He paused, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. "Don't talk like that, Caleb," Finn said, his voice losing its forced levity. "We'll be all right. We always are." He dipped the pencil again, the lead scratching against the rough paper. "I wanted you to know. I wanted you to know that every sunrise I saw, every bird I heard sing reminded me of you, of your laugh, like wind chimes in the summer breeze, of your eyes, the color of the autumn sky back home." The roar of battle intensified. A Union soldier screamed nearby, cut down by a volley of fire. Caleb flinched, almost dropping the pencil. "They're coming on strong, Caleb. Get ready," Finn yelled, raising his rifle. He scribbled faster, his hand shaking so violently the words blurred. "I never told you enough. I loved you, Sarah, more than life itself, more than the Union. Forgive me for leaving you." Another explosion rocked the trench, showering them with dirt and debris. Caleb coughed, wiping the grime from his eyes. He could see the Confederate line advancing through the smoke, a wave of gray and steel. "Remember the day we met by the creek? The sun dappled through the leaves and you were laughing." He choked back a sob. "That's how I want you to remember me. Caleb, they're almost here," Finn shouted, firing his rifle. A Confederate soldier crumpled to the ground. He had to finish. "Just a few more words. I leave you my heart, my soul, and all my love. Wait for me, Sarah. Wait for me in the afterlife, if there is one." He signed his name, the letters barely legible. "Caleb." He folded the letter carefully, placing it back in his breast pocket right over his heart. It felt strangely comforting there, a shield against the inevitable. "Ready, Caleb?" Finn asked, his face grim. He nodded, his grip tightening on his rifle. "Ready?" The Confederate line surged forward, their battle cry echoing across the field. The air filled with the crackle of gunfire, the screams of the wounded and the stench of gunpowder and death. He raised his rifle, aimed, and fired. Another Confederate soldier fell. But for every one that fell, 2 more took his place. The line was getting closer, too close. He could see the faces of the enemy soldiers now, their eyes filled with hate and desperation. A bullet whizzed past his ear. He ducked, reloading his rifle with practiced efficiency. "They're gonna break through, Caleb. We got to hold the line," Finn yelled, firing again and again. He knew Finn was right. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and slowly being overwhelmed. But they had to hold. They had to hold for Sarah, for the Union, for the future. He fired again and again. The heat of the rifle barrel burned his hand, but he didn't feel it. He was numb, focused only on the task at hand. Kill or be killed. Suddenly a searing pain ripped through his chest. He gasped, his vision blurring. He looked down and saw a dark stain spreading across his uniform, right over his heart, right over the letter. He stumbled, his legs giving way beneath him. He fell to the ground, the world spinning around him. Finn rushed to his side, his face etched with horror. "Caleb, no!" He tried to speak, but no words came out. He could feel the life draining out of him, the darkness closing in. He looked at Finn, his eyes pleading. Finn seemed to understand. He reached into Caleb's breast pocket, pulled out the letter and looked at Caleb with tears in his eyes. "I'll get it to her, Caleb, I promise." He managed a weak smile. Then the darkness swallowed him whole. Finn cradled Caleb's head, his own face streaked with mud and tears. The roar of Gettysburg faded to a dull thrum in his ears, replaced by the agonizing silence of his friend's last breath. He pressed his fingers to Caleb's throat, searching for a pulse that wasn't there. Gone, just like that. Around them, the battle raged on, oblivious to the small tragedy that had just unfolded. Men screamed, cannons boomed, and the air was thick with the acrid smell of gunpowder and death. Finn wanted to scream too, to rage against the senselessness of it all, but he knew he couldn't. He had a promise to keep. Carefully, he closed Caleb's eyes. They were still wide with shock, reflecting the chaos of the battlefield. He gently straightened the crumpled letter, the bloodstain already beginning to darken. He knew what it said. The words etched into his memory as clearly as if he'd written them himself. "If you read this, I am dead." The terrible irony of it sliced through him like a bayonet. "I won't let him be forgotten," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. He carefully tucked the letter back into Caleb's pocket, then began to unbutton his friend's coat. A gruff voice cut through his grief. "What do you think you're doing, soldier?" Finn looked up, startled. A sergeant, his face grim and weathered, stood over him, his hand resting on the butt of his pistol. He's gone, Sergeant," Finn stammered, gesturing to Caleb's lifeless form. "I was just—" He hesitated, unsure how to explain. "I was just trying to make him comfortable." The sergeant's gaze softened slightly. "War ain't comfortable, son. It's hell on earth." He sighed, his shoulders slumping. "Leave him. The burial detail will be along later. But there's family," Finn protested, clutching the letter in his mind. "His family will get a letter from the War Department, same as everyone else," the sergeant said, his voice flat. "Now get back to your post. We're still fighting a war here." Finn knew arguing was pointless. He stood, his legs heavy, and looked back at Caleb one last time. He felt a surge of defiance, a fierce determination to honor his friend's memory regardless of the rules. "Sergeant," he said, his voice surprisingly steady, "with your permission, I'd like to take his dog tags, just so his family knows for sure." The sergeant studied him for a moment, his eyes narrowed. "All right, son, but make it quick." Finn knelt again and carefully removed the small metal tags from around Caleb's neck. He clutched them tightly in his hand, a tangible link to the man he had known. As he rejoined his unit, the battle seemed to intensify. Confederate soldiers charged across the field, their rebel yell echoing through the air. The Union line braced for impact, muskets raised, bayonets fixed. Finn fired his rifle, the recoil jarring his shoulder. He reloaded, his movements automatic, his mind still reeling from Caleb's death. Each shot felt like a desperate act of defiance, a way to honor his friend's sacrifice. Hours blurred into an endless cycle of firing, reloading, and dodging bullets. He saw men fall all around him, some screaming, some silent, all victims of the brutal carnage. He felt a growing sense of despair, a fear that he too would soon become just another nameless casualty of this terrible war. As dusk began to settle, the Confederate attack finally faltered. The Union line held, but at a terrible cost. The field was littered with bodies, the ground soaked with blood. Finn slumped to the ground, exhausted and numb. He knew he had to get the letter to Caleb's family. But the sergeant's words echoed in his ears. His family will get a letter from the War Department, same as everyone else. He looked down at the dog tags in his hand, then at the bloodstains spreading on his uniform. He knew what he had to do. He couldn't just let Caleb become another statistic, another forgotten soldier. He had made a promise, and he intended to keep it, no matter the cost. The letter, the tags, they were all that was left of Caleb now, and Finn would make sure they reached their destination. He just needed to figure out how. Finn slumped to the ground, exhausted and numb. He knew he had to get the letter to Caleb's family. But the sergeant's words echoed in his ears. His family will get a letter from the War Department, same as everyone else. He looked down at the dog tags in his hand, then at the bloodstains spreading on his uniform. He knew what he had to do. He couldn't just let Caleb become another statistic, another forgotten soldier. He had made a promise, and he intended to keep it no matter the cost. The letter, the tags, they were all that was left of Caleb now. And Finn would make sure they reached their destination. He just needed to figure out how. He carefully tucked the tags into his shirt pocket next to the letter, now stiff with Caleb's blood. The air was thick with the smell of gunpowder and death. Around him men were tending to the wounded, their faces grim. Some were weeping openly. "You all right, Finn?" a voice rasped. Sergeant Miller, his face streaked with grime, stood over him, leaning heavily on his rifle. "Yeah, Sergeant," Finn replied, forcing himself to stand. "Just tired," Miller grunted. "We all are, but we ain't done yet. They'll be back." "You got family waiting on you, boy?" Finn hesitated. "No, sir." "Not really," Miller nodded slowly, his gaze distant. "Then you fight for the men beside you. That's family enough in times like these." He clapped Finn on the shoulder, the gesture surprisingly gentle. "Get some rest when you can. We'll need every man we got." Finn watched him walk away, then looked out at the battlefield. The moon was rising, casting long, eerie shadows across the carnage. He knew he couldn't rest, not yet. He had a promise to keep, a debt to repay. He needed a plan. He scanned the faces around him, looking for someone he could trust, someone who might be heading in the right direction after the battle. His eyes landed on a young corporal, no older than Caleb had been, writing in a small notebook by the flickering light of a lantern. Finn approached him cautiously. "Corporal?" "Excuse me?" The corporal looked up, startled. "Yes, I was wondering if you might be heading home soon after this," Finn asked, trying to sound casual. The corporal frowned. "Home? Not likely. We'll be here till the Rebs are driven back or we're all dead." "Why?" I have a letter," Finn said, his voice low. "For a friend's family. He didn't make it. I need to get it to them." The corporal's expression softened. "I see. Where are they?" "Pennsylvania," Finn replied. "Near Gettysburg, actually." The corporal sighed. "That's a long way from here, soldier. So I doubt I'll be anywhere near Pennsylvania anytime soon." Finn's heart sank. He was running out of options. "Do you know anyone who might be?" The corporal thought for a moment, then snapped his fingers. "There's a supply wagon heading north tomorrow, to Harrisburg. They might be able to take it from there." Hope flickered within Finn. "Harrisburg? That's close. Do you think they would?" "It's worth a shot," the corporal said. "Talk to Sergeant Davies in the morning. He's in charge of the wagons. Tell him Corporal Miller sent you." "Thank you," Finn said, relief washing over him. "Thank you, Corporal." "Don't thank me yet," the corporal said. "Just get that letter to where it needs to go." "That's thanks enough." He returned to his notebook, his face etched with weariness. Finn found a relatively clean patch of ground and sat down, leaning against a stack of crates. He closed his eyes, trying to block out the sounds of the wounded and dying. He pictured Caleb's face, his easy smile, his infectious laugh. He remembered the day they had enlisted together, full of youthful optimism and a naive belief in the glory of war. How wrong they had been. He reached into his pocket and carefully unfolded the letter, smoothing out the creases. He reread the words Caleb had written, the words that now seemed like a haunting premonition. "If you read this, I'm dead." The bullet hole was a dark, jagged tear through the paper, a physical manifestation of the tragedy that had befallen them. He knew he couldn't let Caleb's words be the last thing his family ever heard from him. He needed to add something, a message of his own, a testament to Caleb's bravery and his unwavering spirit. He fumbled in his pocket for a pencil stub he had salvaged from a fallen comrade and began to write on the back of the letter, his hand trembling slightly. "To the family of Caleb." "To the family of Caleb," Finn wrote, his hand shaky. "I am writing this on the field at Gettysburg. Caleb fell bravely, fighting for what he believed in. He was a good man, a better man than I am, I suspect. He always knew how to make a man laugh, even when things were bleakest. He spoke of you all often, of his mother's apple pie, his sister's stubbornness, his father's quiet strength. Know that he carried your love with him into battle and beyond." Finn paused, the pencil lead scratching against the coarse paper. What more could he say? How could he possibly convey the depth of their friendship, the bond forged in the crucible of war? He continued, his words now coming with a painful, deliberate slowness. The bullet. It passed through this letter meant for you. It also passed through Caleb's heart. He died instantly. He didn't suffer. I swear to you he didn't suffer. He was smiling, I think. Or maybe I just wanted to believe he was smiling. Before he charged, he told me he was ready to see his mother again. I think he always knew he wouldn't be coming home. Finn stopped again, tears blurring his vision. He wiped them away with the back of his hand, smearing the ink. He knew he was failing, that his words were inadequate, but he couldn't stop. He had to finish this. He asked me to make sure you knew he loved you all, that he was proud to be your son, your brother. He said to tell Sarah. Finn's throat tightened. Sarah, Caleb's sweetheart back home. He said to tell Sarah he'd be waiting for her, wherever that may be. He finished the letter with a simple sentence, the only one he could manage. He was a hero. He signed it simply, Finn, a friend. He folded the letter carefully, trying to avoid creasing it further. He knew he had to get it to Caleb's family. He had to make sure they received this last tragic message. He tucked it safely into his breast pocket, next to his heart. The sounds of the battle seemed to fade into the background as Finn sat there, lost in his grief. He thought about Caleb's dreams, his hopes for the future, all extinguished in an instant by a single deadly bullet. He thought about the countless other young men who had fallen on this field, their lives cut short, their potential forever unrealized. A cough broke through his reverie. He looked up to see a medic standing over him, his face grim. "You all right, soldier?" the medic asked, his voice weary. "Just tired," Finn replied, his voice hoarse. "We all are," the medic said, nodding. "We need you back on your feet. They're calling for reinforcements on the left flank. The Rebs are pushing hard." Finn nodded, pushing himself up from the ground. He felt numb, detached from the chaos around him. He knew he had to keep fighting for Caleb, for his comrades, for the Union. But a part of him felt like he was already dead, buried alongside his friend on the bloody fields of Gettysburg. As he walked towards the front lines, he clutched the letter in his pocket, feeling its presence like a weight against his heart. He vowed to deliver it no matter what. It was the last promise he could make to Caleb, and he intended to keep it. He was going to survive this for Caleb. Finn found a relatively clean patch of ground and sat down, leaning against a stack of crates. He closed his eyes, trying to block out the sounds of the wounded and dying. He pictured Caleb's face, his easy smile, his infectious laugh. He remembered the day they had enlisted together, full of youthful optimism and a naive belief in the glory of war. How wrong they had been. He reached into his pocket and carefully unfolded the letter, smoothing out the creases. He reread the words Caleb had written, the words that now seemed like a haunting premonition. "If you read this, I'm dead." The bullet hole was a dark, jagged tear through the paper, a physical manifestation of the tragedy that had befallen them. He knew he couldn't let Caleb's words be the last thing his family ever heard from him. He needed to add something, a message of his own, a testament to Caleb's bravery and his unwavering spirit. He fumbled in his pocket for a pencil stub he had salvaged from a fallen comrade and began to write on the back of the letter, his hand trembling slightly, "To the family of Caleb." His words caught in his throat. What could he say? He looked around at the carnage, the sheer waste of human life. He took a deep breath and continued. "To the family of Caleb, I write this with a heavy heart. I am Finn, a friend and comrade of your son. Caleb was a good man. He was brave even when he was scared, and believe me, we were all scared here at Gettysburg." He paused, the pencil hovering over the paper. He needed to tell them about the charge, about the impossible odds, about Caleb's final act. "We were ordered to charge Cemetery Ridge. It was madness. We knew it, but we followed orders. Caleb was beside me. He saw a young boy, barely old enough to shave, fall. Without hesitation, Caleb ran to him, shielding him from the fire. That's when he was hit." Finn stopped writing, tears blurring his vision. He wiped them away with the back of his hand and forced himself to continue. He didn't die instantly. He looked at me, a strange peace in his eyes. He smiled, a faint smile, and said, Tell them I tried." Those were his last words. He knew it wasn't much, but it was the truth. It was all he had to offer. Caleb died a hero. He died saving another man's life. He faced death with courage and compassion. He will not be forgotten. Finn looked at the letter, the words blurring together. He added one final sentence. He loved you all very much. May God grant you peace. He signed his name simply, Finn, Union Army. He carefully folded the letter, feeling the rough edges of the bullet hole against his fingers. He knew he had to get this letter to Caleb's family. It was the least he could do. Suddenly a voice barked, "Finn! On your feet! They need men on the line!" He tucked the letter back into his pocket, a renewed sense of purpose hardening his gaze. He was no longer fighting for glory or for some abstract ideal. He was fighting for Caleb, for the boy he had tried to save, for all the fallen who couldn't speak for themselves. He ran towards the sound of the guns, the roar of battle filling his ears. He saw the Confederate lines wavering, breaking. A surge of adrenaline coursed through him. He fought with a ferocity he didn't know he possessed, driven by a burning need to avenge Caleb's death and end this bloody conflict. He saw a Confederate soldier aiming at a wounded Union officer. Without thinking, Finn charged, tackling the Confederate to the ground. They wrestled, a desperate struggle for survival. Finn managed to wrestle the rifle away, and with a surge of strength knocked the Confederate unconscious. The Union line surged forward, pushing the Confederates back. The tide was turning. Hours later, as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the battlefield, Finn found himself standing on Cemetery Ridge, the ground littered with the dead and dying. The fighting had subsided, replaced by an eerie silence broken only by the moans of the wounded. He looked out over the field, a desolate landscape of destruction. He had survived. But at what cost? He knew he was changed. The naive boy who had enlisted with Caleb was gone, replaced by a hardened soldier who had witnessed the horrors of war firsthand. He had seen death, suffered loss, and experienced the depths of human cruelty, but he had also seen bravery, compassion, and the unwavering spirit of men facing impossible odds. He had learned the true meaning of sacrifice. He knew he could never forget Caleb, or the other men who had fallen beside him. He would carry their memory with him for the rest of his life. He found a chaplain tending to the wounded, and asked him to ensure the letter reached Caleb's family. The chaplain, his face etched with weariness, nodded solemnly. "I will see it done, son," he said. Finn walked away, leaving the chaplain to his grim task. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew he had to find a way to honor Caleb's memory. He had to live a life worthy of the sacrifice he had made. He would go home. He would tell Caleb's story. He would make sure that his name and the names of all the fallen were never forgotten. Weeks later, a letter arrived at a small farmhouse in Pennsylvania. Caleb's mother, her hands trembling, opened the envelope. Inside she found a letter stained with blood and tears, a letter with a bullet hole that pierced not only the paper, but also her heart. She read Caleb's words, his final message from beyond the grave. Then she read Finn's words, a testament to her son's bravery and his unwavering spirit. She clutched the letter to her chest, tears streaming down her face. She knew that Caleb was gone, but his memory would live on, a beacon of hope in a world darkened by war. Years later, a small stone marker stood in the Gettysburg National Cemetery. It bore Caleb's name, his regiment, and the simple inscription, "He tried." And in the farmhouse in Pennsylvania, a framed letter hung on the wall, a reminder of the young man who had given his life for his country, and the friend who had ensured that his story would never be forgotten. The bullet hole, a silent testament to the horrors of war, served as a constant reminder of the price of freedom, and sometimes when the wind blew just right, it seemed as if you could